An Interpretive Approach to the Despoiled Oracle, SF Field Reports by Bartok Lycus. The opening makes a point about the genres of the writing, but I am unfamiliar and can't make a judgment on those grounds. So I will say that it has a sense of Gothic and Baroque horror, to the sort of R.L. Stein and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, scholastic books sort of feel, to Pulp Fiction and sinister fiction thoroughfare. Given the latter, I need not remind some that I no longer read fiction as mere entertainment, but it is written well enough to ignore the magical direction. Main people in Satanic Front are given roles in the story as it goes along. Some of us will have to hide some of our interests from some audiences or priors into our interests. Certain atmospheres will expose us to those who we can blend these interests with or through. Some are aware of their powers, but I think many are not faking that they don't know what their personas are doing to people. Some are drawn in and others knocked down with the lesson that what is wanted is prone to be redirected at any point. Divination has its answers, but what vehicle will give better interpretations? The use of incidences of bracket, redacted bracket, gives it an air of here are stories that could happen. When activities are forbidden, it is important to be able to know what one is doing and to be able to direct them without leaving evidence. Anything taken is concealed in magical offerings. And only for that, really. Once Satan has someone complete severe text, they are primed for more. Hoodwinked to be official Satanic Front initiates. They endured pain, humiliation, feats of strength and endurance, and drugged visionary trial on the way to some trap and action. Like on the Apt Pupil movie. And some aspects of the initiation would not be physically possible in real life to expect, although there may be some trick to make some of that seem that way. Preaching should not be confused with practicing. Why should someone let another cast them as a sinner, not knowing if they are really righteous themselves? Directed pranks can build to something more serious. If they can worship their alleged savior, why not monuments to another cause? If a society doesn't take part in its development, doesn't such a conservatism punish itself? For those who already see the future of what their life and death could be, something more real than the feel-good projections could already be making its whispers known. That doesn't mean you can't have desires for those who don't share one's actual life path along the way. Fantasies can be interfered with in ways that inform us. Signs may directly afflict us. Sometimes, who fails is the one who wins an authentic identity. Some actions expose themselves as more for personal reasons than a cause, but they transform nonetheless. People will see the parallels even if they wouldn't agree, regardless of what seems as if it needs to be done. We still want to survive and spare those we care about. Once we know that, we push forward towards whatever can be done and perhaps a final insult. The causes of what made a person what they are may be shown in this life, and people will want to add insult to the memory, but the effects left are more real than what people try to change. What is mental illness, and what is the incarnation of evil? Being religious is not the same as bringing the experience into spirituality. Musical instruments and the recordings will address these things and distract from what is considered scripture, as the rabbis and early Protestants used to teach. Punishment and violation of rights like privacy, property, and medical are not the same. It is hard to drop the faith that is failing you, but then desperately clinging without believing may not save one either. The machine awakened and escape merges with the self, like an abduction that leaves one a cyborg. There is something to being sleep deprived. It may make it easier to perceive what has been sent against you in the spiritual battles, if one is to bring forth the Antichrist kingdom. Distractions need weeded out. The battle becomes a physical one, the infernal patriarchy against the septenary matriarchy. Always have a physical sense of your placement in reality. The elemental spirits of fire come to visit those who bring the unlawful shedding of blood down to the ritual burial sites. A spirit of visibility changes took part and aided in what became a vampiric perception. Sometimes people feel trapped inside their body. Sometimes this is because actions have affected them with nightmares. Some need to go through a sort of hell in life to get through the constructed consciousness of a society that thinks it is their way or none at all. Some will go along with the ritual ways of demons of suffering to free themselves, but their bidding is not just a personal matter. It is dealing with the angel worshiping and light worker sorts. 2, their operations can't save them from physical danger. Severe actions are not the end all, but they are steps that make clear one is spiritually dead and operating another will. Particularly, they visit at night, and one of the 3 main types of dreams is the demonic. Immodesty and other sin can open the gates, or it can be health conditions that break the barriers between awareness. The memory of objects can forever form a link that is used by their presence. Tools direct towards their designated employment. A distinction is set forth, and a further use of a remnant is had. Ritual consecration weapons can leave the ritual form with you. I presume the story references the Church of Satan flag and the Saint Germain meditation, but the context is the transforming through the centers with a Belphegor consecration among some sudden illness and a disgusting tragedy. The proof of the accepted ritual and offerings was made known. Substance use is an environmental thing. Satanists need alone time for other reasons, but the blasphemous versions of the mainstream ceremonies are not for the divergence of others. Abandoned buildings may have other things for those who are sidestepping sanity. Sometimes the entities will show you what you are capable of. Coerced indoctrination and forced interference with one's choices of spiritual life are the lack of can turn the places of the events into a sort of physical battlefield. The fictional escape can be used to inadvertently let in the possession of beings that accept whatever is wanted of one's lifestyle. The worst nightmare therein was probably a reference to how his mother was a key source of the spiritual infestation he was becoming. He comes across a young woman's diary, well written in form, but without contents described, aside from that, whether by a friend, protected, or someone he and his friends tormented. A sense of who he tormented came to haunt him as some sort of confirmation of creature stories in the Bible. The earth elementals overwhelmed them at the altar of someone else's projections. The satanic panic could return to combat if not the anti-Christian sentiment. The criticisms of beliefs and behaviors of failing churches. To have control, any sort of fame can start the process. The time to pretend at politics and do what needs to be done as a nation will come. The events and symbols of mythology will guide us in our response to the human piece of garbage politicians and celebrities they've replaced chivalry with. Sympathetic magic is directed at entities responsible for the forces and done with expectation of success. People talk of themselves as more civilized than that, but they tend far more towards what could be called ridiculous in their repressed lives. It would serve most well to do real survival training. We all have a wild animal mode, and there are entities who will presage and commune with hunters. The prey are transformed to mark the resilience of the predator. Now, there's a phrase used in this, and I'm not sure whether it comes from some sort of fictional source or whether it's a band or whether it's something else. I tried looking it up and I can't find what it is, so I just, gave an interpretation like it wasn't a reference. Transformed to mark the resilience of the predator. Groups need an existence beyond the public eye. The tragic history of a place and the nearby things that weird people out can both be used to advantage. The existence and position of some is generations in the making. Now that Mount Hermon, the prehistoric site of worshiping fallen angels, is effectively a center for both the little Satan and the great Satan, the time to raise the Antichrist may be here. It is certainly a time of old-fashioned Satanism, which is honest that some of its possibilities still remain forbidden. The energy of different ages and genders is taken in by those who cover with darkness to bring about the spring of a new era. Some will misuse the legal authorities in their spiritual wars. However, when some figures are made known, they will not be stopped till their mission is complete. When all the tools are in line, the dawning of an overwhelming power will be in place. Spiritual horrors will be surrounding the presence for those who know. The flag of their nation and the satanic front emblem remain a sign of the debauched life. And there is rest for the wicked. The legacy of groups that came before made this possible, and goals for an openly satanic rule of the world seem feasible. A hand in the sinister activities or a power over them will enable an overhaul of society, but some must be discreet along the way. Perhaps it is about the corruptive power of technology and giving it a spirit to influence all types of evil. I honestly think of Reddit, which calls itself the heart of the internet and remains the most toxic social media platform that I am on. Children no longer have to be identified and selected in person to train, but surely some are still endowing the youth with the spirit of the Antichrist. When the Antichrist arises, there will be work for the Satanists to get done. Now, yes, I know it's a fiction book, and some people are going to want me to give a breakdown to maybe compare it to Bluebird or Iron Gates in terms of references to perversion or violence or disgusting things, and it compares, but as I said, for me, it's not the point. And as far as the mean, we have 2 Chronicles 14:14 was chosen because of the despoiling of cities and the spiritual fear that came upon them. You know, the second to last chapter here kind of addresses that more, right? Jeremiah 30:16 was chosen because of the utterly despoiling revenge when your side is joined. Some may know that I've worked my way through a lot of the satanic panic material, and I do intend to post videos on all that until I've shared what I've had to say. But some of the worst crimes that have been stated because of that, because people were getting revenge of how they were mistreated or abused through what they were doing. Maybe it wasn't directed at the people that did it or whatever, but you know, that was the spirit behind some of the real crime associated with the satanic panic. 2 Colossians 2:15 was chosen because it lets us know the despoiling is an exemplary victory on the physical and spiritual platform. The ruins of Lycus is there. Bella Victor, Janos Bartok, and the ruins of Lycus were chosen for their names. But it goes deeper in the ethnic approach to understanding of music and the role of apostates mentioned in Colossians 4:13 and Revelations 3:14 to 22. And reaffirming the idea that it was fiction, obviously some of the stuff that this brings up never happened. Some of the maybe the jobs or whatever that people have had never happened. But as you see, I've driven a lot of points that can be said about it, and other people will have different interpretations. You have references to specific entities and specific grimoires, either explicit or not explicit. Names of characters and all that, and certainly details of the actual stories put down, whether you consider it all one big story or different stories. It does work as both.